What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 341 of Opinions May Vary. I am your host, JR. I have my co-host with me, Alex.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's great.
We are doing an experiment of sorts this week. Joining us this week over the internet machines, apparently the outdated ones. We're gonna move into the more dated ones soon. We're outdated, but joining us this week is our good friend Tony Moy. Tony, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, how's it going? How's it going, guys? Good to be on.
When I say this is an experiment, it's because right now, like while we have our pre-recorded episode, this is going to be up in a couple days on our site for people to listen to for all eternity, or until we decide to stop paying the hosting fees. For a lucky about 43 fortunate souls right now, you're live streaming on your Twitch right now, so people can hear us talk. First time we've ever been live. Little terrifying, because when we pre-record it, if I say something stupid, I can hack it out, and then no one will know I said it, except for me, Alex, and the person who was fortunate enough to be with us.
Or when I get nervous talking to someone, there's a long pause between questions.
Right.
I go, "Hey man, that time you painted that Magneto for me?
That was
was awesome."
Yeah.
That was so cool.
There's stuff. And,
So if you happen to be catching this live, congratulations. You're part of
the studio audience.
maybe one of many. Who knows? But thank you, Tony, for having us on your show, and thank you for coming on our show simultaneously. It should be a good time.
All right.
So to kick things off, how you been the last 3 years?
It's been good. I draw and paint, and that's about it.
That's fair. Last time we had you on was literally just over 3 years ago, back on 178. We had met you at Boston Comic Con. This is when we were trying to be like a tabling podcast. We have a table at a convention. Come listen to our show.
That was your first table, right?
Second, I think. Second or third.
Table.
I think it was third.
It was third.
Yeah.
Third.
Oh, yeah?
And we would play the game of share your art with us. So any other fans who had bought sketches or bought original pages or bought prints, we would want them to come brag about it. Because usually you go to a convention, then you go home and you go to work the next day, and like you might work with angry old guy who wants to talk about sports and politics, and they don't care what Wolverine print you got, or they don't care that like the guy signed your Batman comic book. And so
Right, yeah.
come brag
got a
to
blank
us.
cover.
Yeah, and like, they don't care. So this is a chance to come brag to us about it, and we'll be super jealous, and we'll like all your art, and that's what we were doing when we go to shows.
We were down the row from Tony because eventually, as much as we like manning the table and sitting there and directing people to our friend Brett, who would be at the table with us, because he actually does art, he draws stuff, he has talent. We would take trips. We would venture down Artist Alley, and Alex introduced me to Tony. Alex was getting a painting that year. I believe you picked up the sketchbook as well.
Yep.
And it was love at first sight. We had the opportunity to talk with you, like very soon after that. It was like a week later, I think.
I think so. You're like, hey, can we get you on our podcast potentially sometime? I'm like, yeah, sure. Then I'll call me or whatever.
It was a lot of fun. And then even a couple months later, when we saw you at New York Comic Con,
oh yeah,
you remembered us. You didn't pretend to. That's one thing that's cool about Tony. He remembers the interactions. It's not just, oh hey, yeah, I totally remember you guys.
Yeah, you did the
You're
show
the
thing.
one. So it was really neat.
Weren't you the Mandarin? You were cosplaying as like the Mandarin
For Boston,
like
yeah.
that,
Yeah.
For Boston, yeah. That's what
Yeah.
I remember that.
And when we saw you in New York, you joked about our underground studio.
Yeah. Back when we were in a basement. But you'll be happy to know we have upgraded.
Oh yeah.
We are adults and we own houses now. It's not that big of a deal, but we are homeowners. Lucky us. 30-year mortgages. So
Hooray for adulting.
exactly.
So just a quick recap. It's been 3 years. It was episode 178. We talked about how we met, our intro to Boston. We each gushed a bit about Ben Templesmith.
It's easy to do.
And
It's easy to do.
Yes.
And one of the things that I think I might skip the rest of the intro, and this will be a good point to shift.
Just jump in.
You had mentioned that you were doing a lot of work in pencil pen. Like you saw the world in white, black, and gray, and you weren't really that into color. And then like something kind of snapped.
wow,
You started working with watercolor, and you really hadn't looked back. And since then, you've worked on mainstream.
Yes, I went back to black and white. So recently, just finished Mainstream, which is a 5-issue miniseries that's put out by Zenescope. I think the last issue just came out in the past couple of weeks, and it was something. So the original story actually goes back to probably pretty close to right around that Boston, and when we first met. Before that, 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
a friend of mine, Mike Dolce, he was a writer. He's been doing some small press stuff and everything else. He said like, hey, can you do a 5-page, take a look 5-page script and just kind of draw some samples and whatever, and he'll pitch it around and shop it. And I was like, sure. I'm not really doing anything. I was still trying to figure out what I want to do, and so I did those 5 pages for him. And over those past 3 years, I hadn't really thought about it. He just kept pushing it and shopping it around, and I got picked up by Zenescope last year. And in that process and conversation with him, like during those 3 years, I've gotten a lot more comfortable with watercolors and just kind of wet media and stuff like that. But this was still a traditional comic, and he was like, yeah, do you want to do the rest of you want to do the issues? I was like, well, sure. And I asked them, I was like, hey, do you want me to do the colors too? I could kind of do a watercolor comic. It'd be kind of cool, kind of funny. And he talked to Zenescope, and he was like, no, we just want the black and white. I was like, oh. And literally for those 3 years, I had pretty much thrown away all my inking supplies.
Really?
Because in watercolor, there's saying 2 approaches for watercolors, especially when you're starting off. It's either go 100% watercolor,
Mm-hmm.
or you kind of paint by number a little bit, and you do a little ink and dark lines, and then you paint within those, or use that high contrast black lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to figure out how to paint with watercolors, so I just tossed out my inks. And this end of last year is actually when I started penciling and inking again. And to go back to black and white for literally the first month or first 2 issues, I had not picked up watercolor for like 2 months straight, and it was weird to do something only in black and white, and I was missing it. I will say that kind of heading back into black and white after 3+ years, it was interesting because there's a lot that I learned by doing watercolors and painting that helped me easily translate, and it picked up pretty quickly, and I was able to kind of go with it and figure out my pace and how I wanted to approach it.
So you were doing the pencils and inks?
Yeah, I was doing the pencils and inks. I did digital pencils to kind of lay things out.
Mm-hmm.
I did a quick transfer of the loose, very minimal pencils over to actual paper, and then inked it traditionally. I had seen some other artists that do little transfer, and I have a light box or a projector.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, a projector, and just projected the pencils onto the paper, and I just kind of quickly would re-pencil it on the paper and then inked it.
For a lot of the artists that we talk to now, that's been the preferred method, because you could, whatever you have to change around or alter, you could do it real simply on the computer or on the programs.
Yeah, you just make sure that you the consistency is a lot easier. You can make sure that your anatomy is down and all their points down. Everything fits on the page or in the panel. You can draw larger and just kind of shrink it down, and it helps so much. Let me tell you, I would not have been able to hit those monthly deadlines. Um,
Was that kind of like was it like a culture shock getting back into the business of deadlines and having to meet those, those dates? Was it
yeah.
difficult to adjust to that?
So um, at at the time when I was talking to the writer and publishers and whatnot, I had misheard what was said. I thought when he said, "Yeah, we got picked up by Zemisco," for some reason I thought they said, "Oh, it's going to be a bi-monthly book every other month," and I was like, "Every 2 months or something like that," and I was like, "Oh, okay, well, yeah, that's not a problem." At the time, I was still working a full-time job, so I was 40 hours a day, and then coming back and plowing through and trying to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting like 5 weeks, 6 weeks for the first issue and the second issue or whatever else. I was like, okay, I'm on track. Then by the time we got to like the end, like the third issue, he's like, oh, hey, the deadline is this. I'm like, whoa, like it's like 4.5, 5 weeks away. And then like the fourth issue is like, oh yeah, the next deadline is this. I'm like, wait. I thought that you said this is a bi-monthly book every 2 months. He goes, no. I wanted to start 2 months ahead so that we would have a little time, but it's a monthly book. We just started with a little like 2 month ramp. I was like, oh. So the last two issues were done on in a haze of caffeine and sleepless nights and like no free weekends for me. It was just like plowing through. I did some of those pages on Twitch as well, so people got to see the actual process and things like that.
It's a really important note of communication to get right.
Yeah, confirm the deadline in the beginning. That's
one of the things
from me to all the other struggling artists out there.
One of the things we touched on in the past was, and I was watching your stream earlier today, and some people have asked, like, do you have a preferences to what you like to paint and what you like to draw?
Okay.
And one of the things you had mentioned was like you like to lean into fantasy and some things. But did this book fit into like your preference? Did you take the job because it paid, or was it like, no, this is something I want to draw, and this is a job that I want to create and lend my art towards?
One, I kind of it was one of those things. It was a combination of the things. First, like one, it was something that I guess I inadvertently started in the beginning with those 5 pages. Little side note: those 5 pages from 3 years ago were actually the first 5 pages of the entire series. I didn't redraw them.
Huh.
So there's a drastic difference between like those first 5 or 6 pages and then like moving forward. I was like, really? So one was that. 2 was just sort of personal challenge. Once they kind of said like no watercolor, I'm like, all right, it's been 3 or 4 years since I've actually done anything black and white and pen and ink. What's the artistic challenge to me to go back to it? Because I had kind of shunned it for myself way back when, just to push myself as an artist to get into colors. And so 1 was kind of go back. And 3, I guess, was also another challenge to be able to hit some deadlines. And near the end, it was definitely rushed to trying to hit those deadlines. And I made it within a couple days, so that was good. And also sci-fi. I enjoy the sci-fi. What I like drawing and what I like painting really are things that have different textures. Superheroes and things like that are fun, and they're cool just because of the stories behind it and the characterization and stuff like that. But spandex is relatively spandex. It's basically, naked people with some lines and stuff like that. We've heard that stuff. And then, but like fantasy and even sci-fi to a certain extent, there's a lot of different textures. There's fur, there's leather, there's chainmail, there's wires, there's whatever, and getting into those textures is where I kind of have fun doing it. So that was good. You know, I never really do too much sci-fi, but the book was a lot of fun for that.
We had mentioned that in the previous episode because we really gushed about how much we liked your Colossus piece, and we talked about painting metal. And it's like,
metal.
How paint metal? And it kind of then like that simple topic kind of ended with like, please don't make me do fur. I don't want to do Rocket Raccoon anymore.
Yes, I remember that. I hated fur.
Has that changed? Like, have you gotten more comfortable with you know, any textures, or are some still a struggle for you?
Yeah. I've definitely gotten more comfortable at a wider variety of sort of textures, and just being confident in some of those approaches. Definitely with fur back then, I would just try to draw everything, paint every hair, everything with detail. One of the things I think of, I guess my progression as a painter or an artist was to find ways to focus the details. So it wasn't, you know, you look at like Rembrandt's and everything else, like the chiaroscuro and all that other stuff I was looking at. They would focus the detail where they wanted you to look, and so that's some of the things that I would start doing as well. Like, okay, I don't have to do fur everywhere. I want them to look here, and I just have to hint at it in other places. And that's the same thing with like chainmail. I used to try to like do every single link, and that's fine, that's fun, and I can do it. Does the piece really need it, and do I have to? Does it help the overall? You know, is it just me kind of trying to say that I did it? Sort of approach.
It reminds me of like when an artist has a run doing Captain America, and they decide to draw every scale on his on his outfit, and then like the creative team switches out. The next guy goes, "Yo, I don't want to do all of the scales."
Yeah. So one of the interesting things you're speaking of, like kind of going nuts on the detail and whatever else, with the mainstream, Talent Caldwell, he used to do some stuff with Aspen and other comics and stuff like that. He was the, I guess, creative designer. So he was one of the original writers on it, along with Mike Dolce, and he would all the armor, a lot of the technology pieces. Like, he would sit there and do wonderfully rendered pieces of the armor, of the wires, of the technology and everything else, and he thought things through. And I was like, the guns and everything, I was like, oh, this is cool. And he would send them to me in the beginning and be like, oh, hey, here's what, when we talk about, you know, their gun, here's what it looks like. When they talk about the armor, here's what it looks like. This beautiful stuff. However,
he's only drawing it once.
He's only drawing it once. And I'm sitting there going, like, I got to draw people articulating in these things. I got to draw it in small panels, big panels, all sorts of things. You know, you draw this armor and you're like, have people shake their hands and you're like, I'm going to die. My eyesight's going to just disappear from trying to do all these details. It was crazy.
Even with, you know, having to do all that detail and stuff like that, you know, you mentioned back when you had a full-time job. Now, art is your full-time gig now, correct?
Yes. Recently, in August, it became I guess the official title is a full-time freelance artist. So it's been a change to be able to fully control my own schedule and not be like, oh, I have to meet with these people. I have to schedule meetings. I have to, you know, do a 9 to 5.
I imagine it's almost like, you know, while it might be tough to, you know, draw the difficult characters and things like that, it's almost like you're living the dream now. You know, like it's like the goal. It's you know, you're the full-time artist, which is it's incredible. I mean, congratulations.
Thank you.
And like, was that always the end goal? You know, coming up as an artist. You know, it's like you've made it now. Like, what next for Tony Moy?
It's a major milestone, I think, for any artist to be able to say they are full-time freelance and whatever else, to feel the confidence to make that leap. I think is the first one. Staying there for the longer term, I think is the next one. Like, you know, you don't take a leap unless you pack your parachute and stuff like that to at least have a nice landing.
That's a really good analogy.
Yeah.
I'm not like, it's like, oh, I'm gonna make sure I'm ready in case I fail at something. It's like, no, pack your parachute, man. Like, you gotta ready to hit the ground.
Yeah, you're hit the ground. Like, hopefully you're flying to your destination, right? Hopefully you're flying all the way there. Yeah. Right? You're piloting a plane, but you got your parachute packed, and you know, in worst case scenarios, right? Mm-hmm. So it's also the other milestone, and I guess the other thing is to start to work on the projects that you always talked about. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I said after doing is, like, I'm really happy that I no longer, well, hopefully, no longer I get to say the word I don't have time for that. You know, because now time is what you have. You know, I get to prioritize, like, oh, this comic that I've always wanted to do, or these stories that I always wanted to tell, or these pieces that I always wanted to create. I don't have time for that. Well, now I do. That's not an excuse. That's one big excuse that's brushed off.
Is this might, let's see, how do I want to word this? As politely as possible. So having this time now, as you put it, are there any new projects that you can initiate, or that you've already started, that you know you couldn't have done before because of the time constraints? And and I don't want to make it sound mundane, like, oh, you're just going to keep doing what you did before, but more of it. And because I imagine this would open up, like, you know, new areas to be like, well, I have a specific gig I want to focus on while I'm doing everything else, but it's all my own time now. Yeah.
So there's two of them that are, I guess, kind of front and center, and then there's a few other minor ones. The first one, in doing the mainstream and that initial conversation of, hey, you want me to do like a watercolor comic or something like that, the response was, no, let's just play it safe. Let's make the conservative one, and let's just do black and white. I came to the conclusion that if I ever want to do a watercolor comic for, you know, another publisher or anything else, I gotta kind of prove that I can do it, or they should be able to see what the potential outlook might be, or what the final product might be. So I've decided to start putting together a webcomic that's going to be watercolored, or just a variety of mediums, right? Maybe it'll be a little ink, depending on the black and white, depending on the scene or whatever else I'm trying to convey. But hey, maybe some of those just be pencils, but watercolor and inks and pencils, and maybe a little digital. But I'm going to kind of hit the ground running with all of that. And that was something that, you know, hey, I just don't have time for that before, but now I can actually start putting together, finalize the details, and kind of get ahead to make sure I can release episodes or stories together at a time. And in a environment, I think, for webcomics, where a lot of it's just is mostly just digital art or digital coloring, because that's the quickest and simplest and most readily accessible for a lot of people to do. I think it could be a little bit of fresh air just to have a traditionally rendered webcomic all the way with that. So that's the first one that I'm hoping to have ready to go maybe early next year. So take the fall after the convention season ends and just kind of hunker down in the winter and work on it.
One of the things so go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and the second one was,
it's
kind of a, on my artist bucket list is to do magic cards.
Ooh.
Or something for Dungeons and Dragons or something like that. And I know that some of those are digitals or oils or whatever, but my goal is to see if I can get something with watercolors.
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke over the summer with a few art directors, and one of them was from Magic the Gathering, and they had some very positive things to say. But the overall response that I took away from it was, hey, you're picking a medium, you're doing it very well, but you're picking a medium that isn't something they're using now. So I have to sort of show them as well, hey, do an actual piece, do some actual homework, put together an actual targeted portfolio of what I would do for a Sarah Angel or some traditional magic cards or whatever else, and send it to them. So my goal as well is to work on a few portfolio pieces, I guess, to do for either Magic Gathering or try to get into a D&D compendium or something like that. Like, those are just like the Nerd Tony, young Nerd Tony wish list when I was a kid. Like, oh, it'd be cool if I could do that.
Question from the chat. Do you play Magic, Tony?
Yes. Yes, I do. Not as often as I like, but I enjoy drafts, and I enjoy trying to do the launch events and stuff like that. Little Commander. I do. I like the game. It's enough strategy, but with a little bit of luck tossed in there to make sure that kind of semi-balanced.
This was in my notes too that I wanted to touch on earlier, because we had mentioned early on you were doing some D&D art, whether it was fan art or getting published, and even on your stream today it says D&D and the Crow. And with as much fantasy art as you do you also play D&D?
Yes, I do.
Excellent. Very nice.
This was a question we wouldn't have asked 3 years ago, because we weren't really into it, but we'd
been playing for 6 months at that time, if anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I love the premise of D&D, and when people are new to it, I try and explain to them it's just group storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
It totally depends on people, but it's group storytelling. Everyone has their own story to tell, and you try to put it together and create this larger epic within this world. And I really kind of enjoy it, and tweaking the rules and trying to pick I have a Goliath sorcerer right now. Usually it's a Goliath warrior or barbarian or something like that.
They smash things.
They smash things, right? But no, I have a big ass guy that casts spells.
I'm just picturing a wand in his hand, but it's the size of a toothpick. Because when I think Goliath, that is an adjective. That. Right. That's a good word.
A big 8 foot tall sorcerer.
It's a lot of robe.
The best kind of sorcerer. But that's rad. I want to transition here. One thing that really interests me is essentially what we're doing right now with Twitch. You mentioned you've been streaming, it looks like, you stream a couple times a week at least. In between.
I try to.
Yeah,
more or less successful than others.
And then, you also still do the convention scene. We'll get to that in a little bit. But with the rise of Twitch and the dominance of Twitch, I remember, here's me flexing my nerd muscles. I remember back when it was Justin TV. And it was just people pointing their It was just people pointing
a nerd.
Right. Yeah. I don't even know what Discord is though. But But you know, back when people were just pointing their cameras at their TVs and streaming it, but with the rise of Twitch and now Twitch integrating, you know, the creative side of it, because I remember back in the day, if you weren't playing video games,
Yeah,
like they would shut you down. If I recall, I think like you had to be playing a video game. And now there's talk shows. There's, you know, Bob Ross is pretty much going 24/7 nowadays.
yeah.
And like
they're gonna put on Thursday Night Football on Twitch.
I didn't even know about that.
Was
and
that-
football's the
Thursday
only
Night
sport I care about.
Was that? I heard it was going to
You
do
can
Amazon
like chat
too.
with people.
Ooh, that's weird. I get.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be, if there's a lot of people watching it, the chat's going to be unreadable as it is, but it's just going to be spammed with emotes. But I get it.
Uh-huh.
But what prompted you to get into Twitch? How did you get into this medium now that it's a tool?
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago. I was starting to look at. I wanted to do more video kind of stuff, and the live streaming, and people would always, at conventions, I would paint commissions at my table, and there'd definitely be people just kind of watching and sticking around for a lot longer at my table, perusing just to see, or they would come back, and it wasn't their piece; they would just watch. And so I wanted to share that a little bit more. It's, you know, it's a little bit of an ego thing, you know, like, oh, I want people to watch me. And I tried a little bit of YouTube. I think there was another site that was trying to do the same thing, couldn't figure it out. And Twitch was sort of my next thing to try. And as luck would have it, it was at C2E2, and this Twitch representative walked by my table, looked at some stuff, and, you know, later on came back and pitched me on Twitch. And she was like, hey, any questions that you have, like, let me know. Like, I can help you out. You know, I think you'd be great on our creative. They were trying to grow the creative stream and stuff like that. Her name was Ashley Paramore. Yeah, she totally helped me to get a little more confident, and she was like, hey, do it. And I remember the first couple, the first time I streamed, it was just talking to the one or two people that would like randomly come in. I had no idea what I was doing. But I knew that it was recorded, that other people could come back and see it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just had to pretend like I was talking to people, which was weird.
That's what we do every week.
Right, you just pretend to kind of talk to people. Like, people are listening to this and they're going to find it interesting, and they're going to go back in time and look at it, and you don't want to just be sitting there, you know, looking at your piece of paper and it's all quiet, and, you know, you're you know, I'd be more of a loser than I was in back in high school. So
That's a thing I've seen. It's gotten real popular on Instagram because I see a lot of artists go on there, and they'll just be live streaming while they're drawing or inking or painting and whatever. And like, those are just, it's a lot of fun to watch, and like they zoom in real close in the paper too, and so you get to see like every pencil mark, and that's interesting. And like some just draw to draw, and, you know, they're doing their job, and others, you know, are able to also like pay attention to chat and say hi to people and answer questions, and sometimes that gets annoying because they have to be like, for the 17th time, what materials are you using? What pencil is that? What ink is that?
Yeah. Well, that's the nice thing about Twitch to a certain extent, because you have like bots, and sometimes you can have it trigger certain words, or just pull up and like, hey, what are you doing? And like, oh, well, it's right down there. And people ask what colors I have on my palette, and I just like, hey, down in my about, there's a link, and I have a photo, and it has my palette, and it has every brand and every color that's on my palette, and there you go. And so you can have some of that stuff like kind of ready for some of those questions and stuff like that. That makes it a little bit easier on Twitch. And one of the things on Twitch as well, you have like mods that'll come in and that you can have and just help moderate the chat for you. And it's a little bit easier to do on Twitch than it is like on Instagram Live and stuff like that.
Well, even if like you were saying, if I scroll down right now, you've got like an Amazon, you know, If I want to, I could buy all the colors you're using right now because you've
Yep.
shared them and posted them. And
Yep. And it's all right there.
and one of the things that some people, some artists are really protective of their tools or what they use, because like I have to make this thing and how I do it is a secret, and if someone finds out, then I won't be as special anymore.
I absolutely understand that, because I'm pretty sure there was a time when I thought about that too. You know, there was a time when I thought like that too. It was my secret, my process, and everything else. As you kind of grow and mature as an artist, you realize that, you know, some of those processes aren't the thing that makes your art or your final product great. You know, let's say I project a sketch onto my paper so I can, you know, finish it off and add the details and make it a little cleaner because I have a projector. Great. Let me give you an image. Let me give you the projector and the piece of paper and the pencil and go. It's going to look completely different. I can give you the exact same tools and it's going to be different. And so it's not about the tools or the little tips or the processes. And I realize as well, if there are certain techniques and there's certain mindsets, at least for watercolor, that I stumbled through. I say for watercolor, I learned on the School of YouTube, University of YouTube. And there are things that I had to learn that took me months to finally get the click that would happen. And one of the things I realized, like on Twitch, I'm like, you know what, if you could save someone 6 months of headaches and maybe shrink it down to 1 month, right? That's a good thing. That means that person is going to be able to put out cool art or better art or improve themselves and put beautiful things out into this world. And that's just a better thing overall for the community or for whatever else. And so that's sort of the approach that I've taken. If there's a way for me to save someone and spare someone the anxiety or the frustration of trying to learn just a technique or never be exposed to something that would help them out a lot, hey, I'll do it, because it's a good community and it's not about hiding those techniques. My opinion. IMHO and all that stuff.
No, we always love hearing that stuff. I think what was the last time we really talked about that was Black Rider Industries and the steampunk guys with the tentacle stuff.
Yeah, I'm not going to get it.
I'm trying to think of a name of
Delamorte?
Delamorte and Co.
Got it.
Thank you.
Got it.
They're these guys that they're a company. They sculpt out these really cool statues. They make a bunch of other stuff. They do some steampunk shows, and they have their own Etsy and whatnot. But we had on I think he was their sales rep, and he helps out with production sometimes. And he was like telling us everything they use. He's like, the sculptor uses this specific kind of wax instead of clay because you couldn't get these, you know, it wouldn't hold right. And then what they use to cast it, and then how they make the negatives and all this stuff. And I was like, man, you're sharing so much. And he was like, yeah, it's what it's about though. And and it's like, if you can help more art get created in the world, then you've pretty much done a good thing. And even then, it's like, if you can make someone as good as you or better, like the world's still getting improved. So why not do it?
Right.
And at the same time, they're going to come back and they'll push me to better myself or whatever else. Like it'll figure out a way to balance out, or you know, even if it doesn't, if it's, you know, it's not a lost gain sort of a game.
Yeah.
Going back to the Twitch thing, because I'm infatuated with it. Do you like, you know, getting started? You've been doing it for a little while now, so I imagine you're somewhat used to it. And I was actually watching about an hour before we started tonight. I was right, the hoodie, yes. Watching at home, prepping, you know, trying to get some ideas ready. You were working on a crow piece, and it wasn't working, and you ended up, you know, tabling it. Do you feel like, is it tough to get used to that kind of being exposed, you know, because it is real time, it is live, you can't, it's not like a podcast where you can I didn't like that
Yeah.
question. I said that was really stupid. I'm going to cut that out, and no one's ever going to hear it. You know, is that something that's tough to adjust to,
Yeah.
or is that just the life of an artist?
If you want, this, by the way, for anyone listening afterwards on the podcast, if you want to hear all the things that were cut out, just come back to my Twitch.
It's true. It's true.
It is at first is to part of art in general is to part of being an artist is to put out some of your own vulnerabilities. We've all been through that stage where you're putting together portfolios and you're showing it to people, and every artist has gotten ripped apart at some point. I don't know a single artist that whose first time they put something in front of someone, it was awesome and perfect and it went exactly as they thought it would.
Yeah.
Like you're putting your mistakes, your efforts, all your little issues onto that paper, onto that file or whatever, and you're showing it. So there is a little vulnerability built into the process of art already. And also, one of the things that I learned, I had to come to terms with pretty early on with painting and watercoloring, was looking at all the other art out there and having to realize that what we see on social media, what gets put out there for us to consume on the internet, are the things that people want us to see, right? Very rarely is someone going to post up, well, here's this painting that I totally effed up. Here's this hand that looks like a lobster claw that didn't work out. Like, those are the things that you're not going to see out there. And not that and on Twitch, I think that is something, that's part of what people want to come on and see. But that's part of something you have to be okay with and just be like, yep, you know what? It's happened a couple times on the stream where it's like, you know what? I completely have to start over. And people going like, oh, that actually does happen. Like, I thought Tony never makes a mistake. That's because on Instagram, that's the presentation that I choose to do. So, again, so I think in that effort to maybe demystify the process, or to help people get better, or to save them some angst and anxiety struggle, the doing it live is part of that charm that Twitch can provide, especially when you're doing it several times a week, or for more than just Instagram. Most of the people that stream art on Instagram is like, maybe it's an hour.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It is not uncommon on Twitch to have like 3, 6, 9. I've done a 14-hour stream in the past, and you're not that perfect for 14 hours. You can't script it,
Yeah.
One thing with Twitch that you really seem to have done right is you seem to have grown a community that is very positive. Looking at your chat right now, there's no because Twitch can also be prone to a lot of toxicity.
Trolls.
Yeah, trolls and toxicity, and people just being mean because it's anonymous, and they can get away with it. But your chat seems to be like, everyone here is very positive. They're talking with each other. Someone said, "Good night, I have to go study for a test," and people are saying, "Oh my God, good luck, good luck." It's just very. You don't see it too often. There are some, bigger streamers who have managed to still maintain a positive chat and things like that. But it's refreshing. Alex, what did I miss? What
One of them
happened?
just said he grew us but never waters us.
Well, that's how you keep them in line, I guess.
Yeah, it's time to pull out the super soaker. That I will say this about Twitch. In the beginning, I thought it was. I approached it as me versus everyone else out there to a certain extent, right? It was like me trying to get an audience. And for the first couple months, I didn't quite get Twitch. It wasn't actually until I started interacting with Twitch that it started to click, and I started to understand actually going into and participating in some of the other creative streams and things like that. The creative Twitch community is probably as close as I can think of as a real life example of social media as it was idealistically intended, right? It is the other creative streamers will, one of the things that you do is to you host other creatives, or you raid them, or which is when I'm done streaming, I'm gonna take my 40 or so people right now, and we're gonna go like, this other person is doing some really cool stuff. Let me take my 40 or so streamers and let's go visit and let's see them. You might really like this other artist and stuff. Or you'll be like, I'm gonna take my 40, 50, 60, 100 people, and there's this person that I just see. She's starting off. She has 60 followers. She looks like she just started streaming a week ago, and let's go slam her channel with these 100 people and go nuts with it and like make her day. And that sort of communal, even from the content creators, that sort of communal thoughtfulness is something that you really don't see. It's like, oh, these are my likes, these are my audience members, these are my fans. It almost doesn't exist here. It's just like,
right,
these are creative fans. Let me show you this. Check out these people. Check out this artist. They'll come in and, here today I was rated 2 or 3 times by other creatives. They're like, hey, Tony, how's it going? I love your stuff. Love what you're doing. And bringing their fans over and exposing people that I might not have been able to go out and get. And they're bringing, and I'm vice versa.
I feel like I'd get too nervous and be like, yo, I don't want to stream when Nen is streaming. Like,
everyone go watch Nen. Don't watch me.
Yeah. But here's the thing. People will watch both of us.
It's true.
Yeah. You can multitask, and people will be like, oh, I'm going to watch Nen for a little bit. I'm going to go back and have Tony in this other window, and vice versa. People have multiple streams sometimes going on. I don't know how they handle it, but Miss Kit Kat, thank you for the Twitch Prime subscription.
Oh man, we got a Twitch Prime sub.
Nice.
Yeah.
it's amazing too to see the raid happen, and I hope no one judges me here. A couple months ago, I was watching Ninja. He was playing Fortnite because that's what everyone did a couple months ago. Is you watch Ninja and he plays Fortnite.
Yep.
And he was finishing up his stream, and apparently I don't know if he does it regularly, but he decided to host someone, and he decided to host his brother, like his older brother, who had like 60 people watching him. Wasn't a whole lot.
Right.
And then all of a sudden he had over 100,000 people watching him within just his attitude. Like he was clearly like, he couldn't believe it. It was like, what do I even do with this? Like he was trying to keep up with the chat, and he was trying to keep up with all the people following him and stuff. It's futile.
Yeah.
But it's to see is, and it's so easy to just make someone's day. Like, oh, hey, check out this other person. And then maybe 40 people. Holy shit, 40 people? I can't. What am I supposed to do with this?
What am I supposed to do with this? A couple months ago, I got hosted and rated by Jim Lee.
Really?
I saw you. Jim Lee gave you a shout out, and I didn't realize to the extent of it.
Yeah, I got rated. I don't know, like, holy cow, this is the Jim Lee stream. It was like 400 people or something like that. And then, so it was just the people. I thought he was like, okay, and then maybe like 15 minutes later, like Jim Lee hops in my chat, and Jim Lee follows me, and and everything else. I'm like, and Jim Lee was probably, if I can go back and point to any particular artist, like he was the one that kind of got me into the whole comic art kind of a thing. So as well as probably a lot of other people. So that was super big. And then I think it was like a week later, I decided like, oh, I'm gonna drop by Jim's stream. I can call him Jim because, you know, he friended me and followed me, you know, like Jim and I.
First name basis, obviously.
First name basis. Sorry, Mr. Lee.
You don't have to be formal and call him Jimothy.
God damn it. We're live, Alex. You can't go doing those.
And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to try to like, you know, like, hey, Jim, I'm over here. So I was just like trying to interact with the chat instead. I was like, oh, I'll go talk to, you know, someone to ask a question. I'm like, oh, here's the answer for your question. And then Jim saw my name and he goes, hey, Tony Moy. Hey, everyone, like that Tony Moy, he's an artist on Twitch. Like, go follow him right now and everything. I was just like, holy cow, he remembered me. Fangirl, you know, big anime eyes, you know, and stuff like that.
We know exactly what that's like because we did the exact same thing with you at New York.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
Tony Moy remembered us? What the fuck? Are you serious?
Who was we talked to we talked to this designer out in on the West Coast named Corey Hubble, and he did all his design work for Halo 5 and whatnot, and he was saying like, yo, Joe Madrura, I can't pronounce his name. And he's like Joe Mad like said he liked my stuff and said he follows me, and his terminology was, I got the vapors.
I got the vapors. It says here, I got the screenshot. I got the clip.
So it's essentially it's rad to see that you have this following and this family that you're growing. Maybe water them a little bit, you know, but they seem to be a bunch of positive people, which is rad.
I gotta make them want the water first.
Yeah, they gotta earn it.
Yeah.
Moving on, this has been the fastest hour of my life as we come to what's probably going to be the end here. You're going to be at New York next week, correct?
But also Baltimore like this week.
And Baltimore in like a couple days.
Yeah, so in like 12 hours, I'll be on a plane to Baltimore for a convention. And then after Baltimore, I'm actually just going to go straight to New York. I'm not even going to come back to Chicago and just do New York.
Damn.
And then at the end of October, I'll be doing my first international convention in London, doing the MCM Comic Con, which will be a fun sort of challenge to actually start dealing with some jet lag or anything else like that as well.
All I know about MCM is what Sneaky Zebra puts in their cosplay music videos, and always looks really fun and amazing.
That's all I know. Are the cosplay videos from the MCM London one? I'm like, it looks epic. But the other reason why I decided to try to do it is actually because of Twitch. Because streaming on Twitch, you'll get people from around the world. Today we had people from Australia, UK, Spain, Brazil. I had some people from South Africa watching one time. So you should get much more of a global audience, and because of the number of European people followers that I have on Twitch, I've felt much more confident trying to do a convention over there, because I know I'll get at least a couple people, or I already know an artist that's going to be at that's a local to the UK, and that's going to be at the MCM. So it just kind of helps out a little bit with a lot of that confidence. So Twitch is pretty awesome.
Are you going to be streaming at all? Like, do you ever live stream from convention, or is the Wi-Fi just too expensive?
I mean, I've done it. I've tried to do it a little bit, but it's conventions. So I'm working the convention solo, and it's just so crazy busy. People are constant. You know how it is. They're constantly going up and down and stuff like that. So I can't stream at the convention. It's just, I think, logistically not possible.
Right.
But I can, so I do commissions and whatever. I've done it a couple of times where I've tried to do a stream from my hotel room or something like that, and just while I'm working on a commission. Not as many cameras and everything, but it's something.
That's rad. Oh, go ahead.
You had
Take it away.
this past year. Was this your first time at Dragon Con?
It's my third time.
Was it your third?
And yeah, and every time I'm just astonished at Dragon Con.
That seems to be what literally everyone says. That
Yeah.
Dragon Con was a show like 5 years ago. I was like, meh. I don't need any dragons. I'm fine with dragons. And then I
Right,
realized
right.
it's not a convention that just is about
It's not
dragons.
about dragons. Yeah. It has nothing to do with dragons.
I don't think I've ever heard a negative review about Dragon Con.
Yeah.
It is the Mardi Gras of conventions. It's like 24 hours. Yeah, there's something going on for like you cannot sleep if you can do it for like 3 or 4 days straight and not see everything and catch everything that's going on. So, but yeah,
People that have done both, we usually try to ask them if they have a preference between Dragon Con or Heroes Con.
two completely different conventions.
Okay.
I would actually pose the other comparison would be Dragon Con or San Diego.
Right.
Like both are sort of experiences, right? Yourself like heroes, all three of them actually. So maybe those are like three like all the other conventions kind of potentially blend into each other. Like Heroes has a different vibe and feel. Dragon Con and then San Diego.
We should.
San Diego's like Vegas.
It's like it's the promo con.
Yeah.
New York would be equivalent to San Diego just because there's so much going on and it's it's not based on one thing, whereas Heroes is mostly an artist and comic book based show and Dragon Con is just a party.
Yeah,
I could see that.
With New York coming up in a couple weeks, obviously we've seen you there in the past. I can't recall. Were you at New York Comic Con last year?
No, actually, so this will be the first time back in New York. 2 years. I haven't been back. They had some construction, and so the artist alley like decreased in size.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Because last year it was kind of stuffed in a room I've never been in before. Like it was kind of off to the side, down in not necessarily the basement, but it was like
I've heard horror stories.
It's been a leftover vendor room in the past.
it was
It's like the vendors that didn't fit upstairs, like they kind of like shunted them down there.
it was like, I mean, compared to what they used to have, where that whole like side building was just artist, and it was heaven.
It was less than half the size of that.
Yeah, it was tiny. It was
Stuffy.
Super humid and hot.
stuffy. Yep, stuffy. There was some nice odors going. I mean, it was still
There's always some nice odors at conventions. Let me tell you.
Yeah, right. I mean, it was still a great. There was a lot of amazing people there. A lot of. It was the first time I got to see Kim Jong-gi in person.
Yeah.
And it was still a great experience, but it kind of felt like Artist Alley. I mean, they probably were working with what they had. But I'm glad to see that this year, I was checking out the map. It looks like they've taken the autograph area and they've moved that. And now Artist Alley is there, which is a lot more open from what, again, I'm just going by the map. So I'm really...
From the emails that New York City Comic Con has been sending out to the artists and things like that, it seems like they realize the impact of sort of the cavalier positioning, I guess, of all the artists at New York Comic Con the past couple of years, and so in their sort of speech, it seems like they're trying to address it and make this year better, even though it's not in that main open area as it was like 3 years ago.
That building was demolished last time we were there,
which is such a shame.
Completely gone.
Because it was. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say like that was so last 2 years, like the sort of smaller venues and everything else like that, limited. That was going back to another question of why I also wanted to do the mainstream, was bringing it kind of semi full circle. Was as an artist to get into comic conventions, it helps to actually have comics in your in your portfolio. So I was like, I definitely want to make sure that I do some comics every year moving forward, just to make sure that, hey, I can travel and go to these conventions, and it's easier when space is limited, like something like New York Comic Con some of the larger ones.
I hope that is the correct idea. I hope it works out, because like we're still gonna see the print guy. You know, he just got a giant wall of just prints, and you never see him actually do the art. But there's his 20 by 20 foot tall.
Think of a face. I got a print of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've had to change my presentation and layout recently to try to think about competing with the print wall guys without actually becoming a print wall guy.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's a fine line.
That's the challenge. Yeah.
Have you been able to pick up? Let's see. Do you make any specific items or themes or sized artwork for different shows? Like, can you tell, like, well, I'm gonna try bringing a set of this to New York. I'm gonna try bringing something different to Baltimore, or do you are you just gonna do what you do for every show?
In the past, I haven't really been able to. I didn't have the time,
right,
to target as well as I maybe could have. I do keep track of all the prints and the types of prints that I sell at every convention, so I can see sort of maybe patterns. And I guess the best I can kind of say that maybe for some conventions it's a few more anime pieces get sold more consistently than the comic stuff, or vice versa. So maybe on those levels, but very rarely is it have I tested enough to do like a New York specific print. I know there are some. I will have a New York specific variant cover that I just did with Batman, doing the Batman the Max, and that cover will also be a print, a limited edition print at New York as well. So that'll be, I guess, a first time to test it out for me. But I don't know. We'll see.
How about originals?
Originals are all you can never tell. They're at these conventions. There's just so many people.
It's always a gamble.
It's always a gamble. Like they have to come by. They have to happen to open the page, the right stuff in your portfolio. I have a few pieces of completely non-superhero, just art, right? Watercolor paintings. It's not even fantasy or anything else. It's just, and if the right people come by, they really get drawn to those sort of things because it stands out from all the comic books and stuff like that. And so I can never tell like what originals will sell and what won't. There in Emerald City, I was holding on to this Deathstroke piece for years since last time I met you, and it was just holding on to it. And finally, someone came on and was like, "I want it. Like, we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna get it." And we worked out a deal and then sold it. But that's been, you gotta cross your fingers sometimes. Some conventions I'll sell originals, and others, I won't. I want it all. People won't even ask.
As we come to the end here, sadly, our time is pretty much up. I know. You can the tears can start, but where can it looks like obviously there's the Twitter, there's obviously your Twitch for people who weren't able to catch this live. You can go to twitch.tv/Tony_Moy MOY. You can catch Tony. You can see the bot just very conveniently just spammed all of not spammed, but posted all of the places where you can see your work. You also have a Patreon now. Where can people listening at home, where can they find your stuff if they wanted to go looking for you?
The simplest way to find it is probably on Instagram. Is what I probably easily post to the most. It's instagram.com/Tony_Moy. After that, it would probably be Twitch if you like to watch the sort of the process or the sausage being made, as it were. And then my Patreon recently new since I set it up after I made the made the leap to full-time freelance artist.
Mm-hmm.
That one I'm posting more behind the scenes stuff, extra sneak peeks on some of the videos that I'm putting together and things like that. So, and access to Patreon specific prints and whatnot. So, those will probably be the main three that hits like three different types of followers. Obviously there's the Facebook if you want, to get more of my like personal. I try to keep anything more personal on Facebook. And then Twitter, which, gets posted every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Tony, I want to say thank you about 1 million times because this was a lot of fun.
It's fun.
I want to thank you and your viewers for tuning in and dealing with us.
Are you guys going to go to New York and or Baltimore at all?
We are going to be at New York.
Okay,
we are old men, and Alex has some job responsibilities with it being the spooky time of year. So we're going to be there on Friday.
Okay.
We'll be there pretty much the whole day. It is my first time bringing my lovely wife along. So
boy.
it should, right. she thinks she's ready, but it should be fun. So we'll see you there. Unfortunately, Baltimore is a little bit of a hike for us. Maybe someday, eventually, we're trying to branch out, see some new conventions. But there's also the whole being an adult and money with mortgages. So
just come see me in London instead.
Yeah, that's more, it's more right up our alley. Considering
that jet ski.
How much I love flying. I just love it, absolutely love it. I'm not terrified at all.
Not at all. Easy.
But yeah, this was a whole lot of fun. It has my interest peaked in streaming because we have such beautiful faces for streaming.
Yeah.
But it was a really neat experience. Thanks again to your fans for tuning in.
No problem.
Hey, need
Definitely
more.
have a voice for streaming.
Need more dragons. Hey, thanks for telling us. Great interview.
People said great, which is a nice thing to say.
Stuck around the whole time.
The whole time. They are troopers, man.
They are.
But yeah, that's gonna do it for this week. 1 million thank yous to Tony and all of his fans for tuning in. If you want to re-listen to this, if you want to check it out at your leisure later, you can go to omvpodcast.com. Yeah, I believe we're also in iTunes. Subscribe, like, share, all the usual fun things. So that's gonna do it. Thanks again, Tony. Until next time. What just happened?
Whenever next. Hopefully before 3 years.
Next time is going to be like 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, another 150 episodes or so. It is what it is. But yeah.
I'll pen you in 2020.
So until 2020, I have been JR.
I'm Alex.
I'm Tony Moy.
And this has been episode 341 of Opinions May Vary.